My best friend secretly moved into my vacation home without asking, then had the nerve to rent it out for profit. When I showed up unannounced, she was hosting a lavish party, laughing, "You weren't using it anyway." I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. Moments later, the police arrived, and she realized who owned the house now. I own a cabin just outside Asheville, North Carolina. It's a peaceful place, surrounded by trees and mountains. I bought it a few years back as a getaway spot. My friend, Sarah, had been there a couple of times and always said how much she loved it. Life got busy. Work piled up, and I hadn't visited the cabin in months. During one of our chats, I mentioned this to Sarah. She listened, and we moved on to other topics. Without telling me, Sarah decided to move into my cabin. She didn't stop there. She started renting it out to others, making money from it. She even hosted events and parties there. I found out by accident. A coworker was talking about vacation rentals in Asheville and showed me a listing. It was my cabin. My furniture, my decorations, all of it. I was shocked. I decided to see for myself. I drove to the cabin unannounced. As I got closer, I heard music and saw cars parked everywhere. I walked in and saw a big party happening. Sarah was in the middle of it all, laughing and having a great time. She saw me and said, "You weren't using it anyway." I couldn't believe it. I took out my phone and called the police. They arrived quickly. The party quieted down as everyone realized what was happening. Sarah looked worried. I showed the officers proof that I owned the cabin and explained everything. They asked the guests to leave and took Sarah aside for questioning. The legal process was tough. Sarah was charged with trespassing and fraud. It hurt to go through this, especially since it was Sarah who betrayed me. I took steps to make sure this wouldn't happen again. I changed the locks and added security cameras. It was a hard lesson about trust. Now, I'm more careful about who I let into my life and my property. A few days after the police showed up and Sarah got taken in, things got quiet. Too quiet. I figured that was it. She'd be out of my life, and I could move on. But that wasn't the end. 2 weeks later, I started getting weird messages. No name, just things like, "Hope it was worth it." Or, "Watch your back, some people don't forget." I didn't respond. But it got worse. Someone scratched my car while it was parked at work. My tires were fine 1 minute, then all flat the next. I didn't want to believe it was Sarah, but who else had a reason? I changed my number, installed cameras at my house in Raleigh, and for a while, nothing happened. Then, a notice came in the mail. A claim had been filed against me. According to this, I had abandoned the cabin. Sarah had somehow gotten a lawyer to argue that she had tenancy rights since she had been living there, paying utilities, and maintaining the property. My jaw hit the floor. I called my lawyer. He was stunned too, but told me this kind of thing can happen, especially if she had mail sent there or could prove she'd been living there for a certain amount of time. I couldn't believe it. She broke in, took over my place, and now she wanted to keep it? It got worse. Her lawyer filed an injunction to stop me from visiting the property until it was sorted out. Basically, I was locked out of my own cabin. While I was dealing with that, I found out she'd been spreading rumors about me online, claiming I had gifted her the cabin, that I was abusive, unstable, and had a history of harassment. Total lies. But they spread fast. Some people we both knew actually believed her. I started losing sleep. My job performance dipped. I wasn't just dealing with legal stuff now. It was emotional warfare. She was trying to ruin me from every angle. Then, one of her old friends messaged me. We hadn't talked in years, but she said she'd seen Sarah's posts and something didn't sit right. She told me Sarah had pulled something like this before. She used to live with a guy in Charlotte and claimed he kicked her out unfairly. Turned out, she'd forged documents and tried to take his apartment. That guy never pressed charges, just wanted her gone. I told my lawyer everything. We gathered proof, security cam footage from the party, the original ownership documents, messages where Sarah admitted I wasn't using the place. We even found records of her listing the property on Airbnb using a fake name. Still, her lawyer was fighting dirty. They claimed I was only acting, like I cared about the cabin now that it was making money. That I was trying to punish her out of jealousy. It was like being dragged through mud, all for protecting what was mine. To make it worse, the court dates kept getting pushed. Sarah was dragging everything out. And she still hadn't been officially evicted. She'd moved out temporarily, but all her stuff was still there. The cabin, my escape from stress, had become the center of a nightmare. Then something new happened. One of the local news stations reached out. They had somehow caught wind of the legal battle and were looking into the story. I didn't respond at first, I didn't want more drama. But then I got another message. This one from an anonymous burner email. They only know what I told them. Sarah had gone to the media with a twisted version of the story. Said I abandoned her, that I'd promised her the cabin and was now trying to make her homeless. The story aired a week later. They didn't use my name, but it was clear enough if you knew us. People at work saw it. My neighbors saw it. I started getting weird looks. My boss called me in and asked if I was okay. I didn't know what to say. I sat in my living room one night, watching footage of my cabin on TV, thinking about how quickly everything had spiraled. How someone could take over your life, not with weapons, but with lies and manipulation, and make you look like the bad guy. And I wasn't done yet. I was going to fight back. But not just legally. A few days after that news piece aired, I got a letter, not an email, not a text, a letter. It was slid under my door. No return address. Just a single line. You want the truth? You're not the only one she's done this to. I stared at it for a good 5 minutes. My stomach turned. I felt like someone had been watching me. The handwriting was messy, almost rushed, like whoever wrote it didn't want to get caught. I called my lawyer and told him everything, then made a copy and filed a police report, just in case. The next day, I found a burner account messaging me on Instagram. No profile photo, no name. It said, check public records, San Diego, Tampa, Portland. Start there. At this point, nothing surprised me. I went down the rabbit hole. Took days, but I found what they were talking about. In each of those cities, there were court cases involving a woman matching Sarah's age and description. Each one told a different version of the same story. Sarah got close to someone, slowly took over their home or business, and then tried to claim it as hers. One case ended in a settlement, one was dropped, and the other dragged out so long the guy gave up and moved out of state. My hands shook as I read through the documents. This wasn't some random betrayal. This was a pattern. She'd been doing this for years. She was a full-blown scammer. I gathered every shred of evidence. Sent it to my lawyer. His tone changed immediately. We're not dealing with just a trespasser, he said. We're dealing with a career fraud. Then it got even messier. A woman named Tessa messaged me out of nowhere. Said she used to be close with Sarah but hadn't spoken to her in a while. Tessa had seen the news segment and said something felt off. She said Sarah had once used her name to sign up for a utilities account, without her permission. Later, debt collectors came after Tessa for bills Sarah never paid. She agreed to give a sworn statement. Then a man named Marco reached out. Same story, different angle. He used to date Sarah. She moved in temporarily when he had surgery. After he recovered, she wouldn't leave. Claimed he'd promised her a share of the place. He called the cops. She cried. He backed off. She left eventually, but not without stealing some of his electronics and leaving his apartment trashed. He'd never told anyone before. He felt ashamed. I started to realize I wasn't her first. I was just the one who pushed back the hardest. The more noise I made legally, the more people came out of the woodwork. Quiet victims. People who didn't want the trouble, or who couldn't afford the fight. But now they were angry. I wasn't the only one being dragged through the mud. This was bigger than me. I tried to stay under the radar, but Sarah escalated. She started a blog. An entire blog dedicated to exposing me. She posted old photos, screenshots of texts, some real, some edited, and made up insane stories, like I'd tried to seduce her landlord, to steal her lease. That I'd stolen from her. She posted photos of my cabin, and claimed she had renovated it with her own money, that I was trying to evict her without cause because I was jealous of her success. I stayed quiet online, but every post she made, we documented. Every lie, every public comment. My lawyer was preparing a defamation case, but something still didn't feel right. Then my bank called. Someone had tried to change the address on one of my accounts. The bank flagged it because it didn't match my normal login pattern. Whoever did it used a fake ID with my name and her photo. I was stunned. That's identity theft. Now the police were taking things seriously. The detective assigned to the case visited my house and asked me to walk him through everything, from the cabin to the blog to the new attempts at impersonation. They found a small security breach in one of my old email accounts. Nothing big was taken, but it meant she'd tried to dig into my digital life too. They put out a subpoena for Sarah's devices. Here's the real kicker. While this was all happening, Sarah had been trying to apply for a small business loan, with the cabin's address as her place of operation. She listed herself as the owner-operator of a boutique hospitality business. She was planning to turn my house into her official moneymaker. The detective said, "You're not just a victim of trespass or fraud. You're dealing with someone who's trying to build a fake life on your foundation." I started to understand. This wasn't personal to Sarah. It was strategic. She didn't care about me. I was just the next target. A means to an end. If I hadn't shown up that day at the cabin, she probably would have kept going until she legally backed me into a corner or I gave up. But she miscalculated something. I don't give up. The last straw came 3 months after I'd filed the defamation suit. The court finally granted us access to Sarah's laptop and phone. What we found blew everything wide open. She had files labeled by name. Mine, Marco's, Tessa's, at least 5 others. In each folder, she kept documents she'd forged, screenshots she used to twist facts, and personal info she had no business having. She even had notes on how to emotionally manipulate each person. Stuff like, plays the victim when scared. Back off, then gaslight next day. It was dark. And there it was, one folder labeled Plan B. Inside? Applications she'd started for new rentals in Montana and New Mexico, fake references, and a new name, Samantha Ray Weston. She was getting ready to do it all over again. That night, I sat in my car outside the cabin. I hadn't been back since everything started. It was quiet now, but I couldn't go inside. Not yet. My hands shook. Rage mixed with exhaustion. The person I trusted the most turned out to be a full-blown predator. And I'd been so blind. And I wasn't totally innocent either. I ignored signs. I brushed off things she said that were controlling, possessive, or weird. I let her stay in my space without ever putting it in writing. I talked about my life like it was a podcast she could binge. I didn't protect myself. That was on me. But I wasn't going to carry her sins for her. Court day came. The cabin fraud case. The defamation suit. Identity theft. It was all rolled together. Sarah showed up in heels and tears. Tried to charm the judge. Claimed I had manipulated her, that she was just trying to survive in a world that favors rich landowners. She even faked a limp. But this time, the truth had a louder voice. One by one, every person she hurt came forward. Tessa flew in. Marco stood tall and calm. People she thought she'd buried in shame brought receipts, photos, legal files, signed statements. We had timelines. Emails. Her own words. She broke down when they read out loud the contents of the Plan B folder. The courtroom was dead quiet. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear. The judge didn't just throw the book at her. He made it clear, Sarah was done. She was convicted of identity theft, fraud, online harassment, and trespassing. Got sentenced to 4 years plus probation. The defamation ruling forced her to take down every post and pay damages. She cried when they cuffed her. No one comforted her. Not even me. The cabin is mine again. Cleaned. Rekeyed. Cameras up. I don't rent it out anymore. And I learned. I no longer share everything with everyone. I stopped over-explaining my life. I keep my boundaries sharp. I trust slower, but with more intention. I also now help others who've been in similar situations. Because people like Sarah? They count on your silence. They thrive in your shame. But I'm not ashamed. I fought back. I exposed her. I reclaimed my name, my space, and my voice. She can rot in a cell. I'll be sitting on my porch, watching the sun set over the mountains, free.